My name is Avery Collins, and today I turned 28. I wish I could say I woke up excited, feeling celebrated, but if I'm honest, birthdays in my house have never felt like mine. This year, I told myself things would be different. I even hosted my own dinner at my parents' place, hoping maybe this time they'd remember it was about me. My sister Madison was already there when I arrived, perfect as always, sitting at the table, chatting with mom and dad like she owned the night. I tried to shake off the usual knot in my chest. We ate. We laughed. Or rather, they laughed at her stories while I smiled politely. And then Mom came out of the kitchen, holding the cake. A big, beautiful cake, with Madison's name written across it in perfect pink frosting. Not mine. Not even, "Happy birthday, Avery and Madison." Just, "Happy birthday, Madison." I felt my throat tighten, heat creeping up my face. I asked softly, "Is this some kind of joke?" Mom blinked at me, genuinely confused. "Oh, honey, you know we always just do one cake. Madison's name looks better. She likes the photos." Everyone laughed lightly, like this was nothing. But to me, it wasn't nothing. It was every year, every forgotten card, every time I felt invisible rolled into one moment. And as I stared at that cake, something inside me snapped. I realized I couldn't keep pretending this didn't hurt. This was the last time they'd make me feel like I didn't exist. When I was little, I used to think my parents just forgot sometimes. Forgot to clap when I got an A on my spelling test. Forgot to show up for my dance recital. Forgot that I liked chocolate frosting instead of vanilla. But as I got older, I realized it wasn't forgetfulness. It was a pattern. Madison was the star of our family. She was born 3 years after me, and from the moment she could walk, everything revolved around her. Mom loved showing off her dimples. Dad recorded every one of her piano recitals. Meanwhile, I was there. Reliable, quiet, helpful Avery, the kid who never caused trouble, who could be left alone with a coloring book while everyone went to cheer for Madison at soccer practice. I remember one birthday in particular. I must have been 10. I'd asked for a science kit because I loved mixing things, making potions. But on the morning of my birthday, there was a shiny new bike in the living room. For Madison. They told me my present would come later. It never did. I started shrinking myself to fit the space they gave me. I kept my report cards to myself, stopped asking for new clothes, stopped expecting hugs. I thought if I was patient enough, if I kept being the good kid, maybe one day they'd see me. But they didn't. Instead, I became the background character in my own family. Every holiday photo, every family dinner, every moment. It was Madison's smile in the center, Mom's arm around her shoulders, Dad's proud hand on her back. I told myself it didn't bother me, but sitting there on my 28th birthday, staring at her name on my cake, I realized it always had. When I turned 18, I thought moving out would make things better. I went to college in Chicago, worked 2 part-time jobs just to stay afloat. Even then, most of my money ended up going back home. Mom would call me at night, crying about bills. Dad would ask if I could spot him just this once for car repairs. And Madison, she needed money for her cheerleading trips, for new shoes, for a prom dress. I sent it all. I skipped meals, stayed up late tutoring, and sold my favorite guitar so I could cover Madison's last-minute tuition deposit. When she got into her dream college, they all celebrated like it was a family achievement. No one mentioned that I had drained my savings to make it happen. Even after college, I kept trying. Every Christmas, I bought thoughtful gifts, hoping maybe they'd notice how hard I was trying to be part of the family. But they always bragged about what Madison had achieved. Her internships, her boyfriend, her perfect life. I even came home one Thanksgiving just to surprise them. only to find they had all gone out to dinner without telling me. My mom texted, "Sorry, sweetie, Madison wanted sushi tonight. We didn't think you'd mind." I minded, but I didn't say anything. I kept quiet, the way I always had. The thing about being ignored for so long is that you start believing you deserve it. I told myself, maybe I'm just not the fun daughter. Maybe I'm too serious, too quiet, too Avery. But under the quiet surface, something in me was building. A pressure that kept getting heavier every time I smiled and said, "It's fine." By the time my 28th birthday rolled around, I was already running on fumes emotionally. I had been waiting my whole life for them to see me, to celebrate me just once. So when I walked into that dining room and saw Madison's name on my cake, again, it wasn't just about the frosting. It was about every single time I'd been invisible. And this time, I wasn't going to stay quiet. The room went quiet when I pushed the cake back across the table. It wasn't a loud gesture, but the sound of the platter scraping against the wood made everyone look at me. "I can't do this anymore," I said, my voice shaking. Mom frowned like I was being dramatic. "Avery, don't ruin the night. It's just a cake." "Just a cake?" I laughed. A short, sharp sound that didn't feel like me. "It's not just a cake, Mom. It's every single birthday you've ever ignored. Every time I've been told to understand, to wait, to make room for Madison." Madison's perfect smile faltered. "Avery, relax. You're overreacting?" "No," I cut her off. "For once, I am not overreacting. I'm tired of pretending it doesn't hurt that you're the center of this family and I'm just extra." Dad finally spoke up, his tone calm but dismissive. "Honey, you've always been too sensitive. We don't mean anything by it. Too sensitive." Those words hit harder than anything else. I felt something inside me snap. I stood up, grabbed my jacket, and walked to the door. No dramatic screaming, no throwing things, just the sound of my boots against the floor and the heavy silence that followed me. When I reached the front porch, the cold air hit my face, and I realized I was done waiting for them to change. For the first time in my life, I wasn't going to beg for space at the table. I was going to build my own table, somewhere far away from here. I left without looking back. And I knew, deep down, I wasn't coming back anytime soon. I drove home that night with tears streaming down my face, gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. By the time I pulled into my apartment parking lot, I had made a decision. I wasn't just leaving dinner, I was leaving everything. The next morning, I started packing. I sold the furniture that wasn't sentimental, donated half my clothes, and listed my apartment lease for transfer. It was terrifying, but every box I taped shut felt like I was reclaiming a piece of myself. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't tell Madison. For once, my life didn't have to be an open book for them to read or ignore. Within 3 weeks, I was gone. I moved to a small town in Oregon, a place no one in my family had ever visited, a place where I could just be Avery without comparison. At first, it was lonely. I cried at night, wondering if I'd made a huge mistake. But slowly, things started to change. I found a tiny apartment above a bakery that smelled like fresh bread every morning. I got a job at a local library, surrounded by shelves of books that felt like safe friends. The librarian, Claire, took me under her wing. She invited me to her book club, introduced me to people in town. For the first time, I had friends who saw me, really saw me. No one compared me to Madison. No one expected me to fix their problems before my own. I started celebrating small wins, cooking myself nice dinners, buying my own birthday cake just the way I liked it. Chocolate frosting, extra sprinkles, my name written right in the middle. Bit by bit, the heaviness I'd carried for years started to lift. I realized I had been waiting my whole life for my family to give me permission to live. And here, in this quiet town, I finally gave that permission to myself. It wasn't easy. Healing never is. But with every passing day, I felt less like the forgotten daughter, and more like a woman who had saved herself. It had been almost 6 months since I left when the first call came. Mom's number lit up my phone screen, and for a moment, my heart skipped. Some old reflex telling me to answer immediately. But I didn't. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. Her message was short and sharp. Avery, call me back. We need to talk, I didn't. 2 weeks later, Madison texted me. Hey, Mom says you're being dramatic. Dad's upset. Can you just come home for a weekend so we can fix this? Fix this. As if I was the broken thing that needed repairing. I stared at the screen for a long time before replying with just one word. No. That's when the guilt campaign started. Photos of family dinners without me, long messages about how Dad wasn't feeling well and how family sticks together. Even Madison sent a voice note, crying about how hard it was without me around. But I remembered every time she had stayed silent when I needed her to defend me. Every time she had smiled while I was pushed aside. I wasn't the same Avery anymore. One evening, Mom called again, her tone softer this time. Sweetheart, we're planning a big party for Madison's engagement. She wants you there. Please don't ruin this for her. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath before answering. Mom, I'm happy for Madison. Truly. But I'm not coming back to be the family's afterthought again. There was silence on the other end. The kind of silence that used to scare me. But now, it just felt like freedom. I hung up the phone and didn't cry. Instead, I lit a candle, made myself dinner, and realized I had finally chosen myself. And I wasn't going back. My 29th birthday came quietly. No family dinner, no awkward silences around the table. Just me, a few friends from the library, and a cake I picked out myself. It wasn't fancy, just a small chocolate cake with my name, Avery, written in bright blue icing. But when I saw it, I smiled so wide my cheeks hurt. For the first time in my life, I felt celebrated. Later that night, after everyone left, I sat on my tiny balcony with a mug of tea and thought about the past year. The girl who had stood in that dining room, begging her family to notice her, felt like a stranger now. I realized leaving hadn't been an act of rebellion. It had been an act of survival. I hadn't run away from them. I had run toward myself. My parents still send the occasional message. Madison still posts her perfect life on Instagram, but none of it holds power over me anymore. I've built something better, a life that feels like mine, a life where my worth isn't measured by how much space I take up or how quiet I stay. If there's one thing I want anyone listening to this to hear, it's this. Choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary. Sometimes the family we're born into can't give us what we need, and that's okay. Family is proven by love, not just by blood. And as I blew out the candles on my cake that night, I didn't wish for them to finally see me. I wished for more nights like this, where I felt at peace, where I celebrated myself, where I didn't have to fight for a place at the table. And for once, I knew that wish would come true.